Today's topic is how to get started in Smite's Conquest mode. Now this video is mostly aimed at people who don't play the mode yet but are interested in playing it, especially because we're getting an influx of new players at the moment, I think. So it will be some basics there, but also some things that will help some players that try to transition over after playing for a longer time. So first of all, when it comes to Conquest, it's locked on the earliest levels, which is kind of unfortunate in my opinion. I think it should be unlocked for everyone just to start in it, but as it stands, you have to play some other game modes. First, you have to test out some things, some bot games, whatever, which you will just have to go through. If you then reach the level where you can play Conquest, what you will quickly realize is that it's basically populated with Smurfs. Most new players tend to generally stick to simpler modes, and so the ones you actually find in Conquest are the Smurfs of high-level players. Not all of them are Smurfs, but many of them are. The problem is, a real ideal level for starting Conquest doesn't exist. There is no magical line where the Smurfs suddenly disappear, or where people are suddenly not as experienced as whoever else they're playing against, but experienced enough or blah blah blah. My personal advice on when to start playing Conquest would be start when you understood the mechanics of a few gods that you want to play. So say for example you feel like you want to play jungle mostly, you want to play assassins mostly, then maybe play Thor a bit, then maybe try out whatever, 2 other assassins that you unlocked until maybe level 10 or so, and have those down to the point where you say, okay, I know what happens when I press this ability, and I have a certain feel for the delay on that ability, for example. I've read the description of the ability, I know all the ability can do, and I know how to play the character to an extent that playing the character itself is not gonna hinder me from playing the actual game mode. Because if you're still trying to understand how a character works, you're not gonna be able to understand how the game mode works at the same time. And that's kind of hard in order to get a grip of the game when you're playing Conquest. So maybe around level 10 is just a good start for many. And then many players also have a certain anxiety when it comes to Conquest. What I would advise a level 30 player to do is play duel until you're confident that you can perform in your own role against another player 1v1. Unfortunately, that mode is not available to anyone below that level. So what you should understand and which mindset you should get into is everyone else is equal to you in terms of performance. And this may sometimes be a little off if someone is a Smurf, but most people around your elo will be people that are around your skill level. And when you start Conquest, you all starting elo, so you're not gonna get matched against better players just because you performed well in Arena. It's gonna be exactly the same players as if you played Conquest beforehand. So don't watch the Smite Guru score, it doesn't matter. Conquest, even casual Conquest, has a single matchmaking rate that doesn't apply to any other mode. And obviously I rant about matchmaking a lot. It's not always ideal in how it works out, but don't expect the people around you to be much better. As such, if they talk trash to you, you can expect that some of them may actually know what they're talking about, but many of them will just talk trash because they themselves are not performing any better, they don't know any better themselves yet, so they will just try to blame others, and that's something that you should not be bothered by. You look at your own game, you look at how the game feels, how you can do decently, and that's all you have to care about, and not what anyone else says. When it comes to calling your role, I would say this is quite important. Usually, calling your role in lobby will ensure that you can play the characters that you want to play, and in order to do so you want to either type it out in chat beforehand and then when you click accept and everyone else accepts, just hit enter, or even copy paste, go into the system chat and just do Control V and spam enter until you actually end up in the lobby chat. It's a bit of a scummy method, but it works. But both of these things only really apply if you start at a later level. On early levels, you will often enough find people who don't even understand the concept of role calling. You will find people who call left or right lane, which don't exist in the same way in Smite, and stuff like that. So really, you will often be stuck in a role that you maybe don't want to play. You will often be stuck in support because no one else is picking it. But often there will simply be lobbies where no one is picking anything that has any synergy and everyone is just picking the character they want to play. And on low levels, that's absolutely fine. So if you want a role call and you want to try and get your role that way, it is advisable, but if you don't do it, it's not gonna change much about the outcome of the game in low levels. If you're in the game, learn to use the mute button. If you press the tab key and some guy keeps talking trash, you can click on that, well, sign there that basically is a speaker and mute them. That's all you need to do. Do not give in to these people. Do not listen to them when they shit talk you. Just mute them and move on. No benefit in listening to people where you don't even know what their skill level is, if they could actually give you any advice at all. Outside of the actual game, what you can also do is find a build guide. Now the problem is that there is not really a site that is currently updated and structured logically in terms of builds. There are some decent sites that just give you the most popular build and stuff like that. It's kind of okay-ish, but unfortunately the pro site that used to have builds is no longer updated. And if you just go for pro player builds, that's also kind of not what you should do as a beginner. So you're in a bit of an iffy spot. What I would recommend is trying to look up recent gameplay of the god you want to play on YouTube and just check what those people are building. That's not always ideal, but it will often help. Otherwise, I have a list of basically builds for assassins, for hunters, for mages that you can search up, where I have a single build for every one of those gods. I don't have that for warriors and guardians yet, but that can definitely help you as well if you want to look into that and if you want to have a specific build for a specific character. Sometimes those builds will not be perfect. Sometimes they will be too situational because you got them out of a match where they're looking to counter someone, something like that. But that's nothing that should concern you as a beginner. You should have a solid build, but you should not have a build that has to, you know, accommodate for all special situations you may get into, and no one can expect that from you. And that's something you can learn over time. I do a lot of stuff regarding that on this very channel, so this is something that you can look into over time. But in the beginning, it's not that important. So don't stress about it. Look for a build so you feel comfortable with the items that you have. Don't go for the recommended items usually because they're not really that good, but don't stress about it further than that. In the same logic, in the same tone, focus on having fun. You're not gonna win too many games early on in Conquest unless you're really lucky or you're really good already. You already have a really good understanding, but that's not a problem. It's a learning process. Like in every other MOBA, you'll need to learn the map first. You need to understand what's happening where, when you have to go where, and how to get a lead and how to emphasize on that lead, how to, well, push structures, how to push objectives and all that stuff. And all that comes over time. And honestly, as much as Hi-Rez has tried, I don't really feel like any mode allows you to actually learn that decently outside of Conquest. Clash has some touches of that, Siege has some touches of that, but really, in the end, you have to play Conquest to learn Conquest. So enjoy that. Don't focus on being the best right away. Just enjoy the game mode and try to, well, make it work as best as possible for yourself. Last but not least, I already made another video on this, which is more focused on trying to avoid typical beginner mistakes. Now, this video is aimed at level 30 players because it is more about what to do when you start Conquest on level 30 in order to avoid being hated by your team. So many of the things here do not apply for somebody who's looking into Conquest at its very basic level as a very beginner of this game. But if you would like to look into that just to, you know, get some extra insight on what you have to pay attention to later maybe or something like that, then I will be linking that here hopefully, and it will give you some more ideas. With that, thank you guys for watching. I am currently still at Hi-Rez Expo, or at least in Atlanta, so I will not be able to interact with you guys or anything for now. If you're watching this right after it came out, I will hopefully be back soon when this video comes out. I will then see you for the next one. SLOTH, out.